Kawhi Leonard potentially returning to the Toronto Raptors. It feels like there is some pretty significant momentum there. And Mike Futa rejoins the show.
Returns.
What's up, brother? Yeah, you return after your lengthy time away from the show.
Yes. It was a forced exit.
Yeah. That's all right.
I wasn't ghosting you.
Yeah,
I wasn't ghosting you.
I believe you.
I was in the building.
Yeah, so I want to come to you in a minute, but I gotta talk about this Kawhi thing, and then I want to talk to you about Bo and get into some of the Leafs offseason stuff. Last night I was reluctant to go to bed because Twitter was doing its thing, where all of a sudden Shams is saying, "Hey, this is really making significant progress." Chris Haynes is out there saying, "People are telling me that they're going further down the path." Jake Fisher and Mark Stein obviously have been on this from the outset, and they're starting to push the discussion forward about what Kawhi Leonard would look like with the Toronto Raptors. And it would appear, and this is done with reporting from our Michael Grange included, that the Raptors would potentially be getting Kawhi Leonard for something that's honestly fairly similar to the original trade package for Kawhi Leonard, which is a mid-range scorer who is good but flawed in Brandon Ingram, some contract fodder, and then some picks. It does not look like a extreme price to be paid for this player. It actually is kind of the strongest point of the argument. Yeah, we'll see what the draft pick capital ends up being. And the word on the street is that Kawhi is only willing to sign an extension with the Raptors, even though there is interest in him with other markets. And I'll tell you this right now. Okay, so even right now, I'm just getting this. Brian Windhorst is saying the Raptors and Clippers have agreed on player compensation in the Kawhi Leonard trade and are haggling over draft picks. Okay, so this thing feels like it's going to get done. And I got to tell you, I have my reservations. And I got to feel like others have them too, that I can't be the only one that feels this way, which is, one, there's definitely just this feeling of, now you want to come back? 7 years ago, you had an opportunity to run back a championship with a much better roster and a team that had OG Anunoby and a team that had Siakam and a team that had Fred VanVleet and Norm Powell, guys underneath you that represented the next wave of players, and also guys that in the immediacy were ready to help you win another championship. And I truly believe that if Kawhi returns, the Raptors win the bubble championship, and that one goes down as very, very, very legitimate because they won the year prior. But from a practicality standpoint, the pros are clear. Kawhi Leonard would immediately be the Raptors' best player. He and Scotty Barnes as a tandem would be a defensive force. Kawhi improves their rebounding. He improves their three-point shooting. He increases their draw as an organization. Like, there's a lot of positive here. I don't want to sound like I'm just kind of crapping all over this. But it should at least be mentioned that he's 35 years old and that he does want a contract extension, that he's going into the final year of his deal. And he's not exactly the bastion of health. I think LeBron has kind of broken our brains a little bit, or Tom Brady has broken our brains a little bit in the way that we view sports now, which is that athletes are just going to play forever. Yes, there are exceptions. Yes, there are the Brent Burnses. Yes, there are the LeBron Jameses. Yes, there are, even to a far lesser degree, the Aaron Rodgerses of the world. But Kawhi Leonard, since leaving Toronto, has played like a little over 46 games, 47 games a season. And if you take out the year that he missed entirely from injury, it's 55 games a year. How is that going to look as he ages, and what is the contract extension going to look like? Because the one thing that doesn't seem to be getting mentioned here is the Raptors are a team full of bad contracts right now. And I can't help but wonder what the Kawhi Leonard extension is going to look like 2 years from now. And if people are going to be saying, yeah, now you can't get off that one either. So a big part of me is excited about Kawhi. A big part of me is excited about what he and Scotty Barnes look like side by side. I think the Raptors immediately enter the conversation when it comes to who could come out of the East, who would really challenge the New York Knicks. But also, what are the other moves that you can make, and how many draft picks is this going to cost you, and what does the contract extension look like? Because part of me does also wonder, just telling the truth, is part of the reason Kawhi would be willing to come here and sign here is him knowing that there's a bit of sentimentality at play when it comes to giving him this contract extension. That he's getting out ahead. I'm not breaking up with you, or you're not breaking up with me. I'm breaking up with you. This whole telling the market that this is the only place I'm going to sign an extension. How many markets right now are willing to give Kawhi Leonard some version of a max deal that goes until he's going to be at least 38 years old. So while I am excited, while I do think that a lot of people are going to like this move, while I think that this raises the ceiling of the Raptors significantly, while I'm not really too nervous about what the trade package is, once we get beyond 2 picks, I think that's when it starts to get a little bit banana lands for a guy that does have only 1 year left on his deal. But yeah, just the reservations do come to mind. Anyways, the other return is the actual one that's happened, which is Bo Bichette yesterday. And I got to say, seeing him get choked up with the media before the game, that got me. That got me right in the feels. And Mike Futa was there. You were at the ballpark yesterday. He gets the loud ovation when he comes to the plate. It's a loud out to dead center field. I thought it was a bomb. I thought that he had just returned and he was going to stick to the Blue Jays. He's been kind of out of sight, out of mind. You know, like Okamoto's been one of the best stories for the Blue Jays this season. It basically came down to Bo Bichette versus Okamoto. But part of me, when I was watching the video tributes and I saw Bo speaking to the media, it just kind of became clear to me that Bo Bichette's best place to be was Toronto. And having he and Vladdy kind of continue their careers together would have been great. And looking at Vlad's number, the $500 million, to me, it wasn't so much like, hey, you gave Okamoto this money. It was, man, if you had just gotten things done earlier, you could have split that Vlad $500 million amongst those two guys and probably had them here for a significant piece of the future. Like, what was your Bo feeling yesterday?
Emotional.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I went to the game.
Yeah.
And I think some of the fans were a little peeved because they did they did it early, right?
Yeah.
And so people were still coming in.
Yeah.
And like, I know I fortunately I was already down at the park. So I was like, man, there's going to be people chewing on this because everybody's trying to get there for the first at bat, right?
Yeah.
Which is normal. And they did it was emotional. To me, it almost got me as much as the home opener when they did the real nice of the whole team together.
That got me big time.
Yeah, and that one really got me. And I think because that team in general, I was dialed in on, and the whole way they reflect about that team, I don't think he gets enough credit at all.
No,
they always talk about. I don't remember. He had a home run in Texas or something, and that kind of turned the season around last year or something like that. I can't remember where it was, but his play in general got them into the playoffs,
big
right?
time.
And then he vanished, and then injured, he's gone, and they get on a run. They're like, we probably don't need this guy. But then you think the hits and stuff, and I just see him as a Blue Jay. I still think I agree with you 100%. You track the contracts much better at this, but I don't think, like when you talk about Kawhi, like he chose to leave. Like Bo was never offered a contract, right? There wasn't enough dough to come close. Somebody massively overpaid him.
I think it got to the point, though, my understanding of it is that the reason why he wasn't tendered a contract is the relationship had been frayed
that
quite
much.
some time.
And you could see that, but it wasn't with his teammates.
Yeah, no.
And it was genuine. I still remember him. I think he was rubbing the back of Mattingly's neck as they left the dugout together. It was kind of like you could see this departure. But I think they're a drastically better ball team right now with him. And I think, and there's got to be something. I can't get into the mindsets of players, but there's something to do with the way Vladimir Guerrero approaches the game when Bo Bichette's around him. That is completely different, and you've got to be held accountable because Vladdy was on his way, like he was holding the gun to, like this is what I'm getting, like, or I'm going to go to the market, right? So it wasn't like he took a shave to stay here, and now he's got his 4 dingers. He's 4 ahead of Anthony Santander.
Yeah,
JD.
he's got an OPS below 700.
Yeah, and I don't. But it's like it's not even a threat right now when he's up, and I'm sure he'll turn. He's too good to not turn it around. But last night there was part of me that was like, how would this look? Like, I didn't think he was that much of a defensive mess. I was like, how would this look with Yokomoto at third and him playing middle infield with Clement?
Well, here's
you know
the thing,
what I mean?
man, is Clement and Jimenez have not been great defensively. In fact, Clement's been brutal defensively. It's sort of the lost piece of the season is that we spend so much time talking about Vladdy. We spend so much time talking about the starting pitching that the team defense has not really been addressed from a narrative standpoint.
They booted around. I mean, other than Lucas, like even in center field, it's not.
I know Varsho's not the same guy.
It's not the same,
no,
right? And anything hit to Jesus or whatever, it's like it's an adventure out there.
I actually thought that when they moved Straw to left yesterday and they brought Dalton Varsho in center field, I went, "Why are you doing this? I'd rather see Miles Straw play center field." But yeah, like when you're looking at Jimenez making that kind of money, there's definitely a piece of me that goes, could you have endured Bo Bichette playing short this season? Could you have had Ernie Clement play short? Could you have had Bo Bichette play second?
Yeah.
Was there a different machination that could have worked here if you had gotten a contract done for him earlier and still gotten Okamoto?
And it gets to a point, like I heard you talking the other day about you go from, like, what are we going to do? We got 8 pitchers to what are we going to do? We got 3 pitchers. Like, it's
God.
like, the injuries are real. I mean, Barger is like an afterthought so far. I mean, again, we haven't seen Anthony Santander. Like, so there's injuries are legit. But through that, like I think everybody said, if you got a Vladdy that's got 11 or 12 home runs, you're in the mix.
Of course you are.
Right? So it's frustrating to watch. But the one thing that has remained the same throughout this year from last year is the fans. Like, it's packed again last night.
I know.
And every game it's packed for these guys.
I know.
And that's why sometimes when you see the stuff behind the stuff, like, you know what, you're still dumping ice coolers and whatever. I don't even know what happened the other day when Alejandro Kirk just whizzed past the jacket. And
I think
like
that's just frustration from
yeah,
a guy.
but I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
I love it. I got to tell you, I love it.
6-2. We got nothing to celebrate, whatever it was. But still, the fact that
it's a little bit like you showed up your star guy a bit,
Yeah.
and they have the excuse of, hey, Vladdy was still getting the jacket ready. And I'm sure the thing is I'm sure those two guys are good, that there's no issue between them, so I'm fine with it. But I like the mentality of, hey man, I'm not really in the mood to celebrate when we're in the midst of a losing
He hadn't been
streak.
playing great either, eh?
Exactly.
So it was like more of a self-accountability than trying to show up Vladdy. But there was part of me too that thought about, because that was where the initial friction went with the jacket, right? It was Bo wanted to play ball. He didn't want the jacket. Wasn't a big thing for him. Like, I don't know how many times he just had it around his arms before he already took it off, right?
Brother, this is what I think you're alluding to when it comes to having both guys together, and you're feeling like Vladdy has a piece missing of himself with no Bo.
Yeah.
Vladdy had the playoff run with the idea that Bo was coming back. And no, do I think that he's not ever going to be able to recover as a player without playing with Bo? No. But the one thing that was cool about those two guys together as they stepped into more prominent leadership positions is that you kind of had a little bit of the good cop, bad cop thing. It was just a good balance of personalities with your leadership structure. You got Vladdy, who likes to keep it light, who likes to keep it loose, who seems to wear his emotions more on his sleeve. Like, that was the shocking thing about seeing Bo Bichette
you just
up.
said it, right? Because I think that's everybody's. It's like our athletes here. We like to see certain respect. We want to hear a different. We wanted to hear a different Mitch Marner come up to a microphone.
Yep.
Finally, we want to hear something out of Matthew's mouth different. You get it out of Hazel May drew it out of Vladdy. Some of those emotional things last year where they interview those guys, but we never got that from Bo.
No.
And yesterday, I think people were like, man. Okay, that's probably the Bo the teammates saw all the time that talked about him that we never got.
He cares,
to see.
man. He cares.
And I would take. I mean, you talked about Kawhi and stuff, and I'm just a Toronto sports fan, right? Like, and I'm not like I love the Raps. Good friends with Matt Devlin. I mean, he hardly played when he was here, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's good. But if you told me one of the two, I'd like to just pull a magic wand out and throw him back in the lineup. I'd be taking the guy out of the Mets. I'd be flipping him over to the dugout tonight. I just think it's a different look. He's still, I mean, that first, you talk about the mental when you're struggling. I don't know how a guy could go up there, emotionally just drained from that. In the first swing, he almost friggin' he warning tracks it, right? It's like that's tough to do. But anyways, the Jays won, which was lost in it in their 6-game.
How nervous were you, though, that when it was
Oh, man, that electric fence, which is playing 500 ball, they get up and they just zzz,
I know.
And then they just go way back. And I mean, and I think I could have heard it. Like, I will listen to you guys, Blair and Barker. Like, they're still in it because the American League's so junk.
Sure.
But it'd be nice to hang around until all these guys get back healthy and see if they can at least make a little bit of a run in the wild card. But this kind of seems like you hate to see it, too, because it's like even with the Leafs last year, right? It's another year where you've got, another year without Tanev. Like, as these guys age, right? It's a big thing, right? And now if Gosman's retiring or whatever, it's a wasted year of a guy that you kind of still in his prime that you just blew it. Kind of.
There's a lot of question marks with this team moving forward when it comes to the pitching staff and just the roster
I hate
composition,
to say
salary cap, lockout.
Well, those guys, again, the guys that really last year got all their roses and we gave it to them were the guys up above, right? When kind of nothing that they did really worked, and they still found a way to magically get it done. And this year, their guys are actually, I heard you talking about it, like,
Blake and I
Yashimoto has been great.
Yeah.
And
Rogers, great.
And these guys, they all got extensions out of it. And now it's like, okay, building's still full. How long does that happen if they're scoring one run a night?
I think it's going to last for the entirety of the season.
For the year.
Yeah,
I think
it'll last for the
anyway.
season. And if they can make the playoffs, they'll retain a lot of that momentum. But I think a big piece of this is more so going to be, hey, do they have the right leader in place if this doesn't continue with Vladdy? Because the point that I keep making about him is when you sign him to a massive contract extension like that, the first years are the most important ones. It's like the back end stuff is he's supposed to fall off at that point, but what you're really buying is the immediacy. And so when you lose a season like this one, it is cataclysmic to what you have given him in terms of the $500 million.
But you're talking about, like, from an overall level of aging, fitness, everything. Like, this is supposed to be prime time. Like, and you're basically getting it's almost like Barkov. You don't have him in the lineup for a whole year of his prime, and he's actually there.
Yeah, but you don't have 2 Stanley Cups that you're leaning on from 2 years prior.
Trust me, I get it. But he doesn't. Again, and that you can't just. And that's where I agree. Like, for me, last year I thought that was so magical. But you're right. When it's like this, now you're like that loss, that one out against the Dodgers, way more.
Yeah, stings way more.
Because it seems like forever since we were there. Now at the beginning it was like we're back. Now it's like, oh man,
I know.
Like,
so
when do we play Colorado again?
Yeah, well, they beat us.
I know.
I think they won 2 of 3. That's sort of when the problem started. I don't know. I just felt like the Bo moment was a little bit of closure for the market in terms of, hey, your run here meant something to you. It was a good look for this market and for Bo. And I do think part of the emotional, like the moment for him was reflecting on him trying to play through that injury, even though he was going to be a free agent, and thinking and kind of stating, hey, I was playing on one leg and I was up for big money. And I still wanted to gut it out for this organization. And I hope that was appreciated by the fans. But here's the thing. It was. The fans loved him for it. They'll never forget that, even though they try to kind of black out a bit of the World Series because it was such a painful finish. But yeah, it was just nice to see an athlete come back here and be overwhelmingly positive about the place and feel like he understood the market, feel like he understood the fan base. That was nice. But it did kind of, so while that represented some closure, it did also kind of open up the wound a little bit for me where I went, damn, maybe you should be here. Kind of feels like you should still be here.
Did you quietly at all, you know what got lost in yesterday's emotion? The guy in left field that looked like he was the goaltender from Slapshot.
I didn't lose that. That's Mets baseball.
Soto. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, you know what the only
that ball
thing
was, like the first one, it was like.
Yeah. And no hustle.
The one that he fired is catching, it was like.
Yeah. No,
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
These guys are like, that guy he makes more than Vladdy.
That's why they think, except for here's the thing. He makes more than Vladdy, but then when he steps up the plate and you see his numbers, he's got 977 OPS.
Oh, no, he hits
like,
bombs.
Right.
I'd rather have a guy out there playing dodgeball that hits bombs.
I would happily sacrifice the odd frustrating play in left field
to
have 977 OPS. Yes, it was. Okay, so let's get into some Leaf stuff. Let's just start with this. What do you think of McKenna?
I love it. I love it. I always, like, I kind of deferred because when it was my job, like, I was the one that was going to the house and getting off the plane and meeting the family, right? So when you don't know the players to that depth, I don't want to get into somebody's grill like when Books and Sammy Cause were having the McKenna
breaking down his tape.
Because they got in the room and met them, not to the extent the Leafs, but obviously something happened because I think initially when Chaik and Mats and this group took over, I think there was a thought that Chase Reed or one of these guys was going to challenge this guy, or we might move back. But once they peeled back the onion and got to met this guy, met his family, saw the work that he'd put in. He wasn't just skipping the World Championships. He was getting himself dialed in for the combines, that this was the guy they wanted. And I think once they wrapped their head around that they wanted to keep Matthews and Nylander to be part of this, that this guy was going to be able to play with them immediately and kind of fill the void. Like, you tried, like, it's not a different management team, but it was like Matthias Michelli's going to replace Mitch Marner in some sort of way. This guy looks like he's somebody that can play at that level.
I'm shocked the Leafs didn't want to pay him four and a quarter, whatever it was.
Well, between him and that's the thing, and you don't want it because I've been in those chairs. But between when you've got cap space, it's a great thing to talk about it. But when you use it with Michelli and Dakota Joshua, and it's not just a Band-Aid. Like, okay, well, at least they're here for a year. This is term. Like right now, it's affecting what they do when free agency opens, because they've still got some logs there that they're not sure what to do with when the game starts. And I just like there's such a different when that ball dropped, everything changed attitude wise, right?
Yeah.
You got a strut, you're adding a piece that you never thought you were going to have that's going to help change things around, which is awesome for the city. All of a sudden, you step up to the plate. Like Radish was all of a sudden in the mix, and I don't think they're even close to being done with what they're going to do with this group.
No.
And then, as you said, you hear, you go in, it seems like, wow, we didn't have any, we never have any picks at the draft anyway. So what? And now you got like you're adding picks, and then you hear people again, and I know you wanted to get into it, but people are saying, man, you guys had a good draft. Not only McKenna, you guys did a good job. You guys did a really good job
in a draft that was described to me as not very deep by multiple people. It seems like all those same guys are evaluating what Toronto did and said they really did find value at a lot of their picks. Like basically rounds 1 through 5, the Leafs did a pretty incredible job in terms of the talent they brought in here. You're right, though. There's something to the swagger change that has completely shifted since they got that number 1 pick, since that 12 ball jumped up there, because there was a black cloud hanging over this market. There was a lot of I would say consternation amongst the fan base, a lot of people hand-wringing, a lot of people wondering what the future of this organization was going to look like. And instead of just going from is Austin Matthews going to stay or leave conversation, hey, what are the Bruins going to do with their pick? They end up taking McKenna. They take a bunch of guys in the draft. They close the chapter with Brandon Carlo, which I think is just important for the psyche of this fan base, and also just from the structure of this team is like you really want to have a new look to this roster. I don't think that you could bring back a bunch of these guys and just say, hey, it's all going to be internal improvements because Jim Hiller's here. Like, and the number 1 pick. Nah, that didn't really pass the smell test for me. You add Darren Radish. You add a brand new head coach who comes out of left field a little bit that no one was really anticipating. Now you're heading into free agency. Now you're heading into kind of, I think, still a closing piece of what the trade market is going to be with some interesting names out there. And yeah, there does feel like there's a swagger. There's a real shift of momentum around this hockey team, and I think that's exciting a lot of different people. But to close the McKenna thought, this is the one thing I do wonder from someone in your position, which is you mentioned the trip to the Yukon, right? And how this kid was in the room, which is polished, but not in the sense of he's dripping with PR work, right? That it's not this is not a kid who studied the test beforehand and then went into it and went, okay, now I've got all the answers because I hired the best PR firm in the country and they've prepared me for this. Chayka goes up to the Yukon. This kid probably showed him things that he's never seen in his entire life. Like he's going to be putting him on a boat in a lake in the Yukon, and he'll be the one catching them fish as Chayka's sitting there looking on. He's going to be taking him on an ATV ride throughout the Yukon, showing him the place that he grew up, giving him the full Gavin McKenna experience. Was it difficult for you at times? And how do you balance that where you fall in love with a kid? Like, yes, the hockey stuff does become paramount. There's no question about it. But how much can that bleed into your pick? How much do you think it should bleed into your pick? Like the personality and how much you like the person you're drafting.
Well, particularly that spot, it's massive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the highest we ever picked was 2, and we would have taken Doughty 1. And the amount of time I spent with that family, I went last year to see the Kings and the parents after the game, big hug and stuff like that. Like they're not just assets, they become family. And that's why I always said when you start referring to player, you might do it in a closed door meeting, but when you walk out and start talking about these guys as assets, like that's the one thing that I found special. Like Wayne Simmons was like family. So when you have to, and Braden Shen, right, became part of family. Like talking to him the night they win the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. So when you have to make a tough decision and move on in a trade and stuff like that, or make a business decision, it's hard to do because you care about the person in the sweater as well. That's why I always judge it. It's a little off topic, but it's the same thing. It got to a point like with Kyle Clifford. I used to love watching hockey fights till it became like one of my guys, and they're later in their career, and you're like, when Ryan Reeves drops the gloves, you're like, this is, hold on, help yourself here because you care about them so much. That being said, I think it would be fascinating. And I do like the fact, because to take it even further, it was like, and I love him, but it was like Armstrong's going to be the general manager, Cassidy's going to be the coach. These guys are all just bringing in all the boys. And all of a sudden, it's a name kind of from out there, Chayka, and everybody's, what's going on here? And so far, you're judged on what you do. And being given a pretty messy situation to come into so far, and it all helps, obviously, with the ball coming down to number 1. But that's part of it. That is part of it. Is you're sitting there, like everybody talked about who I don't know who it said when Crosby was. That's Brian Burke said something like that. Well, look at how Pittsburgh did it. Yeah, they won a lottery and they got Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, I think you got to be, lucky to be good to be
100%,
lucky.
but that's once you get
it's about
it.
when your hard work meets the opportunity kind of thing. Like, so.
Well, we're watching like the Oilers have McDavid and Draisaitl,
Yeah, exactly.
and they're spinning their tires, right? And they didn't get like Sherry Bat. They didn't find Connor McDavid after hours of meetings.
Yeah.
Right. He's the guy you take. Right. So this one's fascinating, and I do think that the way they're doing things and having to deal too with like hundreds of employees that you've got to get to know that whether you're going to be changing employees, moving on from new thing, having the nads to pick a coach that isn't like popping off the market when there's names out there that are popping. It gives you they're allowing us to refuel our energy and see positive hope. And it'll all happen when they get in the ice, because all these other teams are getting better too, right? We see these other teams adding. Like Carolina's not going anywhere. It looks like Florida's coming back. But yeah, I just feel much different about the way this team seems to be. There's just an element of positivity and that seems to happen. Now, there's plenty of time for that to fade.
Yeah, listen, once they step out on the ice and if it starts to falter or, we get more clarity on the Matthews thing.
It's pretty hard, though, JD, when you watch this guy's tape and McKenna, when you do it, to think that this isn't going to be special.
Yeah.
What he's going to bring to the table.
Well, and the reason why I bring up the character piece of it and why I think there is an added level of import in this situation is, so Chayka obviously has the branding of this is an analytics guy. Hey, the way the Leafs front office is going to operate right now is through looking at models and making sure that this guy's a fit and this guy they can get more out of, blah, 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 blah. So far, the additions and the re-signings they made, like they bring back Troy Stecher yesterday to a small contract, right? Like I think it's 2 years, 1.2. Yeah. Troy Stecher understands this market. He played his ass off last season. He deserved to stay in the mix here. There were times where he really outplayed Brandon Carlo. Do you want to build your team around Troy Stecher? No, you don't. But that's a character guy that you brought back who gave you an honest effort in every single game. You go out and you realize Darren Radish wants to be here. This is a late bloomer. This is someone who's coming from a winning organization. And by all accounts, is someone who works his ass off and is going to understand what he's entering into with this market. You take Gavin McKenna, not only high skill, but real high character and a different sort of upbringing. You are looking at this now and kind of its totality, and I feel like one of the through lines that they have is trying to get guys who understand the market a little bit better and who do have that secondary gear of when things get hard, can you keep pushing forward? And I really like that. Yeah. And I don't think that's showing in the Leafs models that they have and whatever that they're using to try to acquire new players. It seems to me that they do have an understanding, and maybe this is the Matt Sundin element of it all. Like at least maybe some partial piece of this is him evaluating this and going, what we need are guys who understand the value, but also the difficulty of playing in this market and who can do it. Yeah. And so far, what I see with what the Leafs have done is they are targeting guys who, to me, have those elements.
100%. And that's, again, because you'll get exposed. If you try and fake that, you'll get exposed.
Some guys very recently have.
100%. But to that point, and the only thing that I want to, because I'm going through that process of the interviewing, the one thing they made that I really was very much appreciative of, because I listened to the initial press conference with Keith Pelley as well, and I'm like, am I going to sit down here and be just looking at numbers flashing on the wall like a beautiful mind here? And they made it quite clear that they want analytics to be a part of the decision. There was not this, and it's not divided like it's 90 analytics and 10. It's just there was no use of it, right? And they had a massive department which was not going.
They're being overlooked.
Yeah, and that's the part when you walk in as Keith Pelley, you have every right as the new boss to go, why we have this department, they're not even being spoken to, or that's what the apparent project. And so because now you hear these terms like alignment and database decisions and stuff like that, but they're still talking about the caliber of the player. Right? Like they got down to it and they fell in love with Gavin McKenna, the person, to go back, right? And then they felt comfortable with what they were seeing as a player, right? So that character, that didn't come from a numerical background. That came from face-to-face, what they got to see about the kid when he went up there and got to know him as a person, that they could put an exclamation mark and go from a chalkboard to a Sharpie putting his name down as this is what we need. And this guy's going to be able to handle our market in the good and bad times. So I think it's fascinating. And again, And plus, now you'll find out the alignment because we're talking the success we had in Los Angeles. You can just use the term alignment. It was back then, but we got to a point, and between your amateur scouts would go out and see a player, and you could see something, and you'd see. I'll use Wayne Simmons as he couldn't protect the puck, but you're like, our development team can teach him how to protect the puck. So now your alignment, you're not worried about not drafting him because of that. So now you drop him off to development, who cleans all that up, and then he goes to your sports science part and he puts on 20 more pounds, and now your American League team takes some time to develop, and then it moves to your pro. That's the alignment they're talking about. So like I hear a guy was trying to look, I think it's Bilecki or something. They drafted this kid. So I talked to my buddy, and he's like, man, he's like 100 and something pounds. And I'm like, but if they have, and whether they have the structure in place already, I know they got a bunch of people in development. I know like Clifford and Muzzin, and I think Haley's, Wickenheiser's there. If you can now look at a guy like that and you can plug him in alignment-wise, the finished product, you're going to feel real good about. Because the upside on this kid, from what I'm hearing, is exceptional.
Huge.
But totally unfinished product. And that's something that's been missing in the past, too, is where's the last time they've taken a guy? Like, Nyes was an absolute dream pick, right? Because you get him in the second round, and you don't have other picks around him. But he's also a human beast.
And he also wasn't really developed by the organization.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
He was developed in college, and he came in as this monster.
Yeah, he's 6'3" coming out of university.
They've got to start taking these pieces and putting them through the assembly line of alignment, and now start producing some of your own pieces.
Yeah.
On top of, because everybody knows when the salary cap goes up, they're going to be able to spend like very few teams in the NHL can spend. But you still have to produce some of your own to keep that, whether it's to be able to produce for trades or stuff like that. So that's why we joke when it's like, I used to have all the time, I'd have people go, why don't you, Toronto fans, we'll take Doughty and you like take Marinson in a third, kind of stuff. Like,
I agree with that, Joe.
That's it might have been you that might have polished that one to me.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like literally, it's you've got to have the proper assets. So when a guy like Quinn Hughes comes available, you can put a package like that to be in the mix. So it's exciting times. And again, I'm sure every part of the station they've been reviewing, like he would be watching the amateur meetings and taking notes on who's there, who's just hiding in the background without a voice. The pro scouts, everybody's getting a chance to shine or to show that you're really not of much value. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. But again, fascinating. And it makes, with all this stuff going on, it makes it kind of feel like you need a little time off, but it's exciting to think when training camp breaks.
Everybody's going to get a little time off.
Soon. Oh, I know.
It's going to, you guys.
Friday.
Yeah, you guys in the pure hockey world are just going to disappear, go off of the
I told Maddie Murkey, I said, Maddie, I'll be leaving Friday.
Yeah. Okay, so I love that. I love that take on organizational alignment. I love the idea of having guys that actually do develop in your system, not only for trades, but we're seeing it in the game now where you need to be young, you need to be fast, you need to have depth, and you need to have guys who can step in for your team and give you cheap play at high NHL levels. But one thing that I am like you mentioned, the things that are now going on, the ways that you're going to spend the money. I want to talk to you about that a little bit after the break, which is just this. I've been really excited with what the Leafs have done because they've kind of middled it without feeling like they aren't picking a direction, right? Darren Radish kind of falls in their laps. They take him, they extend him to something that's a lot of term. But when you're looking at some of the other numbers that are out there, you go 8.5, not too bad. Brings a dynamic to this team that they didn't have. That's really nice. You get the first overall pick, you take Gavin McKenna, you move a player like Carlo, you add draft assets, you get a little younger. That's all nice. You look like a team that's built a little bit better for the future. That said, there's a couple of moves that seem to be sitting out there that make it a little bit more definitive, and that involves potentially trading Matthew Nyes. That potentially means trying to target somebody like Werenski. That means bringing in a goaltender like Sergei Bobrovsky. I want to discuss, the difficulties of riding that middle path and when that's going to start to diverge for the Leafs. That's with Mike Futa next. All right, second half here with Mike Futa. So I mentioned it that the Leafs have done moves that pull in two different directions, right? You go out and get a guy like Darren Radish. You give him an 8-year contract extension. That's like a win now move, right? You trade a guy like Brandon Carlo for more draft pick capital. You trade, the Joel Wool trade, I think, was a step towards resetting the timeline a little bit. That's your starting goaltender up until maybe a couple of days from now with one of the rumors that I'm really not too keen on. And you were discussing it on your show yesterday. And I was like, I don't know what I'm missing here with this Bobrovsky stuff. But they do seem to be riding this line fairly well so far and again, you mentioned some of it does take luck that Darren Radish wants too much than Tampa can offer. He wants to play in Toronto. That's actually a little bit of luck, right? He decides, I don't want to go to market and see what the full value is. I kind of want to go play for the Maple Leafs. That's a little bit of luck. So you take a bird in hand, right? Like it gets put there for you. You decide to capitalize on it. First overall pick, you capitalize on it. But so far, they've done this decent job of being like, yep, we're going to move off Wool. We're going to go get a younger player. Hey, we're going to move off Carlo. We're going to get 2 draft picks that probably don't help us for a minimum of 3 seasons. We're going to take the first overall pick. That's a guarantee. But yeah, we're going to sign Radish. And now they're heading into free agency in a trade market where there's things like, hey, they're interested in Sergei Bobrovsky. Hey, they'd be interested in a Werenski trade. So I want to start with the Werenski trade and what you feel about it, because some people have told me Leafs aren't going to have enough at the end of the day, that ultimately push comes to shove, someone's going to be able to outdo them. My thinking, though, has been, well, if Werenski's saying there's only a certain amount of places that he's going to re-sign with, and Toronto's one of those places, that does limit the field a little bit in terms of what the offer is going to look like. But my understanding of it is it would be something basically somewhere in the ethos of this. Nice, one of their prospects, that Colorado pick for sure, potentially another pick, and then maybe some filler pieces for Werenski. And from my vantage point, I go, yeah, all right, if you trade for him, that's a defenseman. Like, that's actually a 1A. That's something that this organization has been lacking for forever and ever and ever. And you start thinking about him in the lineup and you go, whew, that does a lot for you. But there is an element of rob Peter to pay Paul here for me where I'm like, well, you're not exactly super deep on the wing. And while you might feel like you can replace that more easily than going out and getting a 1A defenseman, losing a 23-year-old in Matthew Nyes, when you just took Gavin McKenna first overall and you look like maybe you had the ability to reset your timeline a little bit. Now you're giving out draft picks. Now you're giving out prospects. Makes me feel like there is a little bit more added urgency. Plus, you don't have the answer with Austin Matthews yet. Like, you don't know conclusively if he's going to be here for a longer run or, hell, what he's going to look like, Futs. Like, he just got his knee eviscerated. This is someone who's had a couple of injury-plagued seasons and hasn't been the same guy. Where are you at just with trying to pursue Werenski for this team right now in this moment?
I would, in a heartbeat.
Okay.
And here's my take on it. By the way, before I forget, we were talking about could Florida get more greasy. Did you see they just acquired Gudish?
Oh, I saw it.
They're like, wow, they're losing Greer. So
McKee texted me like when they got Hathaway.
Yeah,
that they should healthy scratch McKenna for the first couple of those games. And I can't say that I disagree with that take.
Well, that's why I said it's too bad Nick Delorier re-signed, because I would have made sure Nick Delorier was in the house. Anyways, having a plan. This is where last year, and again, this isn't a beat up on Brad Charlotte, but when he kind of said, it was almost like they were so not prepared to be bad, right? And it got so late in the game when you all of a sudden had to be prepared to sell that it almost looked like wheeling. You're just winging it, right? Yep. Like Lawton at the last second. These guys, apparently there wasn't a trade done at the witching hour around the 3 o'clock. And the fact that all of a sudden Matthew Nyes names comes up out of the blue, who is clearly, that's a home run that you hit in the second round, a unicorn. The guy's probably, if he fights a couple more times, he's probably the new age Tom Wilson. He's that good.
And he's making less than $8 million a season.
And he's and that contract's going to age very well. However, and again, I have no behind the screen proof. For me, I would be concerned about this. The way he needs to play to be effective, as you made the thing, the last time that, Tanev kind of got hurt, it wasn't a lot, right? When you start to break, your body starts to go to a certain point.
Yeah, you're 36 years old and you get 2 concussions in a row.
And there's been a lot of times that he's missing people. What is it? His upper body. So if there's a chance that you think this player isn't going to be able to play the way he needs to be the best version of Matthew Nyes, do you really want a chance to move on and maybe get something that like a 1A trumps everything on defense, right? For me, if you get a Werenski and he says this is one of the places I'll go, and it could have cost me Nyes and a prospect, I would think that they don't want to. They want to be good. I would think they'll probably take one of the left shot D2 to help them in the meantime. That you don't necessarily want to move on from. Like they've held on to OEL. There's McCabe.
I was going to say maybe it is McCabe. Maybe it's like Nyes, McCabe.
I don't even
prospect.
think. I'm not even sure. I think they're all protected too. Like I think OEL's the only one that doesn't have protection this year.
Yeah.
But anyways, I wouldn't want to move those guys either. But if you're talking about now, Werenski. As I said, it's not only the Leafs don't have one. There's probably 20 teams in the league now that don't have a legitimate number one. Like this guy's, we're talking about some other players coming in a little bit out of there. This guy's entering his prime as a Norris Trophy winner on the Columbus Blue Jackets. So if you bring him in, and I think Elliot made the comment now, because now you always have nobody on the power play, to now you've got Werenski and Radish on your power play, and people, we only play 1D in a power play. No, if you got two of those, you can play them both in the same power play.
Yeah, you could potentially have a power play unit of William Nylander, Austin Matthews, Gavin McKenna, and those two guys.
Yeah.
And
I honestly, it wouldn't bother me. At that point, I'd be paying Corey Perry $1 million to go stand in front of the net and be a net front presence and a pain in the ass too. But for me, so you look at that. That's the only reason, because his name never would have come up unless there's something because you got to give something to get something.
It has come up a lot.
No.
And now it's
because
I'm
just saying the others. Oh no, nice.
Okay, yeah.
Werenski's up there. It's happening.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
I mean, with Nyes,
I'm saying
this
with him,
is two different regimes. So I wonder if, given that it was Tree Living, and they looked at him and said, "We might move you for draft pick capital," because that's really what the deal was with Montreal. And then there was some rumors that they were interested in moving him for other pick capital with Chicago, and now you're talking about maybe moving him to Columbus. I do wonder if some of what you're saying has some I know you already established that this is not peek behind the curtain stuff in terms of
because I can't fathom when you got a guy that fills this box. However, you give me, if I don't have any worries about this guy walking on me, Werenski, and you told me that I could switch the two and they're both the best version of themselves, I'm taking Werenski
10 times out of 10.
In a heartbeat. But and again, does it poke a little hole up? Yeah, but not to the extent what a pure number one 28-minute a night guy plays both sides of the puck, can transport it on his own.
Played a ton of games the last 3 seasons, hasn't missed a lot of time.
100%. And his A-plus character, you're doing it in a heartbeat. And I think the fact that he chose to come here, that would have to be part of it too, to make the initial decision, is that you're gonna just show him how good life is here, that he's not going to want to leave.
Well, my thought would be, if they did trade for Werenski and that was done, he had established he wants to be here. My thinking would be, seeing as he's teammates with Austin Matthews, Team USA, that those two guys would have had conversations and Matthews is staying, and that the Leafs don't make that move unless they know Matthews is staying.
Yeah. I don't think this is an intelligent group. I don't see there can't be that much of a risk factor.
They're not
the goalie
doing
you're talking about.
Yeah, that
somebody's got to know something about that one, JD, because it's just
I don't
an
get
age
it
factor.
at all. I hate
not
it.
when you're talking the numbers that he's talking about.
I hate it. It makes me sick.
6 times 7 or something. That to me is just, now you're fireballing.
He's 37 years old. He's coming off of 2 down seasons. Last year being his worst.
Different defensive core in front of you. However, you're right. That's a position that you're not priming out at this stage. Now, if it's a 2-year deal or something like that, sure, I'm sitting there talking about it and stuff. But 7 years, that's especially when you look at, and I get the whole Stolars thing, and now you got to ask for, you got a young Russian to tutor, to the legendary Russian and stuff. But that's just a lot of term. But no, I think that's going to be fascinating, because you start to see the build, and there's going to be a couple head shakers when you come out of this, and you go, that's
free agency.
That's nature of the beast. We're talking off air. I think Mason Marchment is a perfect fit here, right? He's been here before. Another one that kind of walked the laundry out of town without for nothing, but he is
Dennis Malgin.
Wow,
he was good.
Yeah. Exceptional.
Buddy, have you seen his Swiss League stats?
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah. Swiss League. But he's going to get the more guys that have gone off. And I talked Paul Capizano's his agent, Mantha, who has 32 or 33 goals last year, doesn't have a great playoff. But these guys, because of all the teams that have fallen off the board and all the teams that still need to add, are going to get paid. And that's going to be a number that probably going to have people shaking their heads to get it done. But however, if they move on from Matthew Nyes, Marchment's going to look a lot more enticing, on the because you've got a hole in your lineup, and you still want that top six looking pretty rosy, shiny. Easton County, I talked to Mark Hunter about can this guy be a top six? Because he knows him better than anybody, right? And yeah, he thinks he can. And he showed. I mean, I love the fact that he finished up the year and didn't piss and moan and went down and won a Calder Cup, and kept to work on his game and stuff like that. So there's some exciting pieces there. But again, it'll be when you start to look at the rosters that win at the end, and you compare. There's so much more work to be done, and this is with the best version of Matthews, right?
That's the piece of the domino that can't get answered until we drop the puck.
Yeah, 100%. But
I don't care what they say. Last year, they told us, everybody, Trey Living in front of a room full of media said, this guy is as healthy as he'll ever be, and this is going to be the best version of himself. And so until I see it.
100%.
Yeah.
And Ian Allen's these guys have to be the best version of themselves on top of all these other positive moves for any of these moves to have pushed the needle, right? Because you look at those rosters, man. Like I was there in Carolina when they start building and they've got room, and if they start adding like Carlson, they're not sitting back,
no,
right? And they've been in on everybody. Florida, like they're kind of once again they're going to be healthy. I mean, they're going to be a year older, but they're going to be back in the mix. And you look at all these other teams that are kind of coming, right? Like last year, Buffalo seems to be way more established.
Montreal.
Players want to go there. Montreal's making their moves. Like Columbus was starting to. This would be a kick in the.
Yeah.
You lose this guy, you're swimming upstream again. But no, I just think again everybody's getting better, and you've got and again they're in that fine load where they're trying to retool, replenish, and still be relevant, and that's hard. That's hard to do.
That's what it is for me. And I understand they don't have their first round pick the next 2 years, so there's definitely an impetus to say, hey, let's be good, let's be competitive. You go and get a guy like Werenski, that really does change.
Well, that to me is why when you've made it quite clear that this 2 years of the Austin Matthews, that I think if you bring in Werenski, I think the Matthews question is answered. He's going to stay, right? And then you have some choices to make with where Nylander's at. If Nyes is still in the picture, where they're at. But I just think the Werenski thing, anybody in their right would be crazy not to just be jumping for hoops, right? It's the same thing when Hughes came up. It's the same thing, if they just don't come up, right? Like McCarr's not. That's why they say they're going to open up the tank to keep him in Colorado. Those guys just don't become available, right? So it'll be fascinating.
Yeah, that one.
He's better than Pietrangelo at the same stage when Pietrangelo went to Vegas.
Question.
And you saw how he moved the needle in Vegas.
Absolutely. The Bobrovsky one to me is where I get a little bit more nervous because on paper, if you just said, hey, they're bringing in a veteran goaltender. Like someone likened it to Ed Belfour to me, where they were like, hey, Eddie was the same age. It's like, yeah, Ed Belfour wasn't asking for a 6-year contract extension. Ed Belfour wasn't looking to be paid to that degree. And first of all, like when he came here, there's no salary cap. So it's a totally different story in terms of the risk assessment. I just don't understand really the idea of now you're burying your two young goalies behind two guys. And yes, the thought would be, well, Stolarz or Bob, given their age, they're going to be out of the lineup for quite some time, so those guys will end up getting their looks. I'm thinking, yeah, I don't want to add another guy who's 37 years old and going to be turning 38 at that position, who also takes on the injury risk and who a year from now just feels like, hey, how do you get off that money? Oh, you can't. Oh, there's no way.
And Hildeby needs waivers now too,
yeah.
Right? So I think the Askarov, I think his run in the playoffs emboldened them to feel a lot better about things, and rightfully so. That's how good he was. Sorry, I called him wrong.
Yeah, it's okay.
But I think it clearly emboldened them to we feel so much better about this position. But just like we talked about the Jays starting the season with 8 pitchers and feeling great.
It feels too thin to go into
all
the
of a sudden,
season with
it's like last year.
What
are we going to do with all these goalies? And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, Wall is not even at training camp. And then Stolarz is hurt 3 weeks in. You're like, okay.
And you saw how it derailed their season. You saw how quickly
100%.
Things came apart because they just didn't have goaltending. And trying to put the wear and tear, like all of a sudden, if you don't have someone more reliable with Stolarz and you got to play him too much, we know how that goes. You can't do it.
And to its own, like right now, the only thing, you look at Florida, and why are they know him better than everybody.
I know, that scares me too, man.
Like, why are they not? I mean, and I think he might circle back because I can't imagine anybody out there thinking 6 or 7 years. But, I mean, again, you talk about whatever, the no tax, chance to win. Why in the heck are they not just getting them signed in a hurry? Unless they've got something else in the wind out there.
There's just been too much buzz.
But they get Schmidt today? They picked up Schmidt?
Yeah,
he's not going to be their number one. So
that's it.
Plenty out there.
There's so much smoke. Maybe it's just another situation where Florida's using Toronto as leverage the way that Marchand did, but I don't love where it's going. Anyways, you can reach out anytime at JD Bunkis on Twitter and Instagram. Mike Futa, thanks so much for doing this. Good luck with your show later today. We'll see you tomorrow.